Some children grow up feeling like they're on probation in their homes. Based on my performance, I'll get a performance review and they'll let me know. Maybe they'll cup me. Thank you for your time with the firm. Good luck in your future endeavors. So there are certain children who live feeling literally on probation. So unconditional value means you have a value that cannot be lost. Inherent value means your value, it's not outside of you, meaning you don't have to acquire it. There are children who grow up feeling they have to go out and accomplish something to have value. They don't even believe that they matter unless they go out and prove it by doing something.
Rabbi Shais Taub has become the go-to voice for Jews seeking deep healing through authentic Torah wisdom, blending Chassidus with raw emotional honesty. Whether he's breaking down addiction recovery or explaining the soul's journey, he speaks straight to the heart with clarity, compassion, and spiritual depth. In this episode, I did a live recording with him at FFH, my favorite Pesach program I've been to, and you hear a lot more about them. And there's a live audience there. It's a masterclass on parenting, on what to do and what to never do with your children. Thank you to this week's sponsors, Wheels to Lease, Shul Space, and the Dream Raffle. This episode is in loving memory of Miriam Sarah Bas Yaakov Moshe, Shimon David ben Yaakov Shlema, and also Zev Yisrael ben Avram and Esther. Oh, and be sure to hit the like button or subscribe button so you could see all our content straight away. Okay, here we go. I'm Yaakov Langer, and you're listening to Inspiration for the Nation. I want to jump right in and talk about the conversation that we're going to do is about how to cultivate and create the most successful children possible. Let's start off hot. Like you said, hot take. What's the worst thing a parent could do?
Ooh, I like to reverse engineer it, like flip it. Like, how do you ruin you guys? Okay, yeah, like the worst possible parenting.
Worstest.
Okay, if I wanted to undermine something, God forbid, but okay. Very simple, very simple. And if you would follow this one principle as your guide, it would effectively undermine your child's life. Yeah. All you have to do is just follow this one thing. And that is view your child as a nachas machine, that they exist to give you gratification. I'm using the Jewish word, nachas, that untranslatable Jewish word of parental pride or satisfaction. View your child as they are there to give you fulfillment, gratification. They're there to live up to your expectations. That's it. If you'll just do that, you will a marvelous failure at parenting and ruin your child's life.
So the reverse. What is our goal? Because it's interesting. When you're learning to drive, you get this whole guidebook and you have to take tests. Being a parent, they're like, okay, here's the baby, enjoy, don't mess them up. So they're like, uh-oh,
right.
Have another one. Like, what? You have a third? Yeah, like, okay.
You don't even need a license. It's crazy. Yeah.
So what's the guidebook? What are we supposed to be doing for our children?
So flip it. Flip the bad advice into good advice. And this sounds radical. It sounds radical, but it's not if you understand it. And that is, instead of viewing your child as there to meet your needs and fulfill you or gratify you, flip the whole thing and say, I am here as a parent to be of service to my child. A lot of people are threatened by that. I'm not going to serve my child, they're going to serve me. But the truth is, they didn't ask to be born. We brought them into this world. And when we bring children into the world, we sign up for a job, whether we like it or not. And that job means to tend to that. And first and foremost, like my biggest push, I speak about parenting a lot, and specifically, just so people know what my credentials are, I have a parenting course, an online 6-week parenting course, where over 2,000 mothers and fathers have taken that course. So it's interactive. It's not just an online course where they sign up for it, they take it at any time. It's a group, it's a cohort. We go through it together. I know these people. I know what goes on in their homes. There are people in this Pesach retreat who have been through that process with me. And I can tell you from the front lines, watching what happens, that when they take on this attitude of, I'm here to meet my child's needs, and specifically the key, provide emotional safety and security, everything else falls into place after that. So, when kids behave the way we envision that they're going to go,
it's pretty easy. It's great. You get the nachas, even though that shouldn't be the goal, but okay, great. But let's say they don't perform the way want them to, or hope that for them, for their own, not just.
It's interesting. Basically saying it's easy to be a loving parent when our kids are doing everything we want. But when they're not, it's much harder. And I'll add to that question and say that no one can push your buttons. No one can trigger you to this like your own child. For a lot of reasons. First of all, they know you well. They know what gets under your skin. Also, we're so invested in that. There's a lot of insecurity, fear, like what's going to happen. So, it's very easy to become emotionally dysregulated when parenting. But the truth is, our number one job is to not allow that to happen. To not allow ourselves to be tricked. And that's why I say, when people ask me, Tom, you have a suggestion, a good parenting book? Because people also, they assume, because I give a parenting course, that I read parenting books, which I didn't. I've read books. I read some books. Not that many. I actually don't really read so many books. I don't. I learned Torah. I learned the holy books. But no, I don't read so many books. The last parenting book I read, I think 20 years ago, I read How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk, which was written by two Jewish mothers. And that had some good points. But I haven't really read any parenting books. But when people come to me and say, Rabbi, what's a good parenting book? I tell them, in all earnestness, the best parenting book is Shar HaBitochen from Chavis Alabot.
Such a Rebbe answer.
Yeah, well, okay, let's make sure it's not just...
Yeah, but practically, yeah. Let's
unpack it, because I'm serious when I say it. So, Chavis Alabot is Duties of the Heart, Rabbeinu Bechaya, about 1,000-year-old work of Musar, of practical guidance for basically the duties of the heart, the emotional aspects of Judaism. And there's a specific section called Shara B'Tochen, the Gate of Trust in God. And it teaches us how to cultivate our trust in God. So why is that the most important parenting book? Because the biggest obstacle to effective parenting is the emotional dysregulation of the parent. Or what's the solution for emotional dysregulation? How do we become emotionally grounded? How do we become untriggerable, if that's a word? Is through cultivating our trust in God. So then we can start parenting. So the most important thing is the inner work, that we are emotionally stable. We do that through connecting to God as our source of rock solid stability. And then everything else sort of flows from that.
Do you, from your experience with dealing with, so many parents, young parents, old parents, whatever it is, do you see, I guess, in this generation, a bigger struggle with people understanding who they really are?
Yeah, it's an interesting generation. That's interesting that you're saying it, because the fact that you've been asking means that you've observed something. You've noticed something about this generation, about the struggles that we have, you talk to a lot of people, so you have your finger on the pulse sitting in your way. Let me flip it on you. What do you see is happening with parents of this generation? Neither of us have lived in other eras of history, but based on what we know, what do you think is happening in this generation? Because I have a very strong opinion about this, but I would love to hear you talk about it.
Yeah, I can only speak for myself as me being a parent. And my wife's there, so maybe she wants to add to this. But I think my generation, at least, and I'm 32, is very overwhelmed. I feel very overwhelmed as a parent. And I had great parents, and my in-laws are great. But growing up, it was very common to see families of 7, 8, 9, 10. And I don't know if, and not even from a people always got into finances, not even to a finance perspective. I just think emotionally being able to be there for, and I'm a young parent. My kids are 4 and 2. So I'm like a baby in this regard, but that's my sense, but you have way more experience with this.
I agree 100%. I think what they're observing is true. And I think there's a couple components of it. First of all, I'm not so sure that we are more overwhelmed by parenting than previous generations, as much as we're more aware that we're overwhelmed. I think in previous generations, parents are humans, right? They're not flawless, perfect angels. So parents did get triggered. They did. And they often allowed their personal reactions to get mixed into their parenting role. I think at this generation, we're more aware, even intuitively, even if people can't articulate it, we're more aware of the fact that that really shouldn't be happening. And then when it does happen, which inevitably it happens, because again, we're also flawed, imperfect beings. When we do get triggered and our emotional frailty does come up, we feel guilty about it. I don't know the previous generations felt so guilty about it. I think they just took it as collateral damage. I think we feel guilty about it. Then we start beating ourselves up. I see a lot of parents today who have a real inferiority complex, inadequacy. They really beat themselves up. The best parents, by the way, it's always ironic that the parents who are the most conscientious are the hardest on themselves. But a lot of what I try to do in my parenting course is right up front to alleviate a lot of that guilt, because it's not productive. It's creating more stress, and the stress is the biggest enemy. Like I was talking about before, the key to everything, or at least the key to getting started, is the emotional regulation. So one thing is, yeah, people are overwhelmed. I don't know that they're more overwhelmed today than they always were, but they're aware of the fact they're overwhelmed, and they're overwhelmed about being overwhelmed, and it creates this like negative feedback loop. So again, Shara B'Tachan, we go back to trust in God, because how are you going to break that? How are you going to interrupt that vicious cycle when a person is stressing about the fact that they're stressed? We have to have a way to get out of that loop.
Are we, and I'm trying to understand it, are we being maybe a little too sensitive? Because I feel like maybe back in the day, a parent is a parent, the kid is the kid, and now you're kind of having it like, you know, the parent is worshiping their kid and trying to do whatever they can. And is it kind of backwards?
Well, that's a good question. So first of all, walking on eggshells is what you kind of described me. That's not a good thing, because you can't do it. Look, for instance, I'm up here, I'm talking to you. I know that this conversation is going to go beyond the two of us. So there's a certain pressure. I mean, you know, with the pressure to perform, right? You want to have a meaningful message, and you want to get it out to as many people as possible. But if you and I were sitting here hyper aware of the fact that we have to perform, then it would kill the conversation, right? So a lot of it is getting into the moment, getting into a flow state. It's another thing I encourage parents, is to trust their intuition. I say with my parenting course, there are no tips and tricks. Don't memorize anything. I'm not going to give you a list of things to memorize that somebody else is telling you to do. What we are going to do, and this is a fundamentally, inherently spiritual concept, which is we're going to get in touch with the intuitive parental wisdom that God is giving every mother and father. So a lot of that, like that nervousness, oh, I'm going to mess with my kid, I'm going to mess, and you perseverate on the fear of the thing itself brings on that thing, right? So a lot of the pre-work before we even interact with our children is real connectedness to this idea that God gives us the ability to parent our children. Like you mentioned before, we don't have that book, we don't have that course, and that, you know, it's easier to qualify for having a child than it is to drive a car or to get a fishing license, or right. And the irony of that. But at the same time, we believe that when a child is born, you mentioned, you know, the financial pressure of having a child. We believe that every child is born with all of their financial needs allotted for that, and that every child is a blessing. And that when you have a child, Hashem ultimately is the one who's paying the bills. The money comes through different channels, but ultimately Hashem is the one who makes sure that somehow miraculously it all gets paid for. Okay. So is that only limited to the financial means to raise a child, or does that include the emotional resources? So I tell parents all the time, if you are the parent of this child, Hashem is providing the resources. You have access to the resources, which is also why I say, don't listen to parenting experts. Don't listen to them, because they are not your parent's child. You are going to have the unique insight. I'll give you an example. It sounds maybe a little bit, so it sounds a little bit impractical, but I believe this and I've seen it. You know how we name a child? Okay, so we believe, Jewish tradition is, that a child is named through Ruach HaKodesh, through a divine inspiration. It's not an accident. In other words, a parent doesn't give a name to a child. A parent identifies the name. Kabbalistically, a name is actually the combination of energy. Each letter is a energy wavelength, and the combination of those different letters is the spiritual path, how the soul connects to that body. If you're familiar with these concepts, so it's a very spiritual concept, and that a parent identifies this is the name of that soul in this body. Now, that sounds really, really lofty, like what normal parent is able to do that kind of stuff. This sounds like really holy. And the answer is, well, that is. And even if normally you're not capable of seeing the energy wavelengths and the letters, but when it comes to your child, you are given this unique insight to be able to identify that the name of this child's soul, if you give them the correct name. Okay. Well, similarly, you as a parent, you have access. Doesn't mean you're going to use it, but unfortunately, a person could have millions of dollars in the bank and never make a withdrawal, and they feel like they're a pauper. Like, you have access as a parent to all of the wisdom and the insight that's necessary to parent your child. So a lot of what I tell parents is, to counteract the walking on eggshell syndrome is like, you have to believe that there's a higher power that is divinely inspiring you to parent my child. That you have to listen to that intuition. And sometimes we can't hear the intuition because the emotional dysregulation. So we get back to Shara B'Tachan and working on our trust in God, speaking quiet the nervous system and calm down and hear the voice of inspiration. But parents have to know that they have the ability to parent their children. They have to be able to do it with confidence. They have to be able to do it with a certain feeling of calm. And when the parents are calm and confident, and the home is a safe place, the home is a stable place, but it comes from this spiritual concept that on my own, surely I'm inadequate to parent my children. Of course, on my own, I'm a limited human being, but with God, we can do this. You can do it.
I'm curious. I mean, everyone in this room is very spiritual, I would say. But let's say someone's not spiritual, right? And they're good people. There's great non-Jews out there. What advice would you give to them?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you also, a lot of the people who are drawn to the spiritual parenting approach are not Jewish. They're coming from other faith traditions, and they do resonate deeply with these faith ideas, even though my particular way of articulating it obviously is drawn from my tradition. And I unabashedly use the Torah terms for things. And I'd say all the time, my only real source is Torah. Like I told you, I didn't read any parenting books in the past 20 years. So I didn't take any parenting course. It was all based on Torah. But the question is, what if someone says I'm not spiritual? This is too, flaky for me. And I've had people say that. Interestingly, by the way, I've had that complaint from religious people. Meaning they're okay with faith as far as like the ritual and the rules. But once it gets into like the emotional stuff, like the feeling, it feels weird for them. They're not comfortable with that. What I will tell people is that our souls came to this world to have a human embodiment experience, part of which is to have to form a relationship with our Creator, a real relationship. In heaven, souls can't have a real relationship with God because they're like beams of light. They're just shining. The shaft of light isn't it really distinguishable from the light source itself. So we have to come into this otherness called embodiment. And with an ego, it feels separateness and then overcome the separateness and then reunite with our source. So the whole purpose of coming to the world is to have the spiritual awakening. Some people are born with a certain spiritual hunger and they go looking for that reunion with God. Other people are quote unquote more normal and they're more grounded. They're not looking for that kind of stuff. But then will come some area of life that's so confounding and so frustrating that we're forced to admit that there's no even powered solution. And we're forced to become spiritual. So I will often tell people who are not spiritually inclined, listen, if you got this on your own, like if your human power and your human resources are working for you as far as parenting, great, then keep doing what you're doing. But if you're feeling a certain inadequacy, that you're coming up short and that there must be something more, perhaps this itself is God's invitation to you for growth. And I see that so often. The people will have massive spiritual growth that they're forced into it because of parenting. Like if they wouldn't have kids and they could just live their own life, they wouldn't have that desperateness. They wouldn't have that feeling of there has to be something more. But parenting will expose our vulnerabilities, expose our deficiencies. And that's a beautiful opportunity to start looking for something greater than ourselves. So I would look at it as maybe parenting is your opportunity to become, if you're not so spiritual now, maybe parenting is your opportunity to start to become more spiritual.
It's very interesting.
We'll be right back to this week's episode, but first, let me tell you about a raffle you actually want to win. It's the 11th annual Tesla raffle from Chesed Chicago, and this year, it's bigger than ever. You're not just entering to win a Tesla anymore. No. You can now choose from any EV, Tesla, Rivian, Lucid, or take $50,000 cash.
This is nice.
Woo! And if you buy 2 or more tickets before July 11th, you are automatically entered to win a rare Tesla Tequila worth $1,600. No strings, no gimmicks.
Literally one of the hottest cars on the market.
Chesed Chicago is a powerhouse of chesed with over 80,000 programs supporting families in crisis. Your ticket does more than give you a shot at a dream car. It helps real people right now. Go to ccraffle.com and use promo code LECHAIM for $25 off 2 tickets or $500 off 15. There's only 9,999 tickets that will be sold. So you can win big when you give big. I'm hoping for one of you will be the winner. And you're likely seeing me drive around in this gorgeous Rivian. It's so much fun, and I want you to be the winner. And now back to this week's episode.
Talking about spirituality, I'm curious what your take is on looking at the Torah, looking at the Bible, and learning from there how to parent.
You know, parenting is in the 10 Commandments. It's 5th commandment, honor your mother and your father. And I don't think that there's a biblical verse that has been more weaponized than that verse and more misused than that verse. Very often parents will invoke that, we call it keep it all vain in Hebrew, the honor of father and a mother. They'll invoke that, they'll play that card, the keep it all vain card, to disastrous consequences. Well, I'm your parent. You have to do as I say. So you have to understand how that verse is applied. We don't just open up the written scripture and think that we understand exactly what it's saying. There's an oral tradition that explains how to unpack these verses. And as Jews, we follow halacha, Jewish law, which is where the oral tradition is codified into practical steps. If you look in Shulchan Aruch and the Code of Jewish Law, where it speaks about the laws of Kibud Av V'Em, of honoring your parents, which is chapter 240. So, like the first 15 halachas, the first 15 laws are all describing the incredible obligation that children have towards their parents. And it's really, really lofty. I mean, it's like, it's almost like there's nothing too demanding that a parent could ask for, and Torah wouldn't back them up. Like if a parent says you have to do this, that's like, now the child has to do it. But then the halacha addresses, so at first the halacha is addressing the child. Here are your obligations toward your parents. And they're really, really rigorous and really demanding, and all of that's true. And then the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, turns to the parents and uses very forceful language. And I'll use the Hebrew language for those for whom it resonates with, but I'll translate it, of course, as well. It says, "Aser la'adam b'hachbid ulai al banav." It is aser. Aser means forbidding. It's like not recommended. It's not a good idea. It is forbidden as a point of Jewish law for one to make the yoke. I mean, like a yoke. I mean, like an animal, like a beast of burden has a yoke on its back. To make the yoke excessively heavy on one's children. Rather, one should turn a blind eye. So you referred to that before, like, are we, in this generation, are we too gentle? Are we too soft? The Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law says, turn a blind eye. Lest you, the term is place a stumbling block before the blind, which people who understand rabbinic parlance understand what that means. Do not place a stumbling block before the blind is a biblical verse. But that doesn't just mean, it's not limited to literally putting an obstacle in front of a blind person, physically blind person. It means that as well. But it also means being complicit in someone else's sin. And one way of being complicit in someone else's sin is by setting them up to fail. So a parent who is excessively demanding, which it's very ironic because Torah will co-sign that parent's demand and say, now the child is obligated to live up to that demand. But if the parent hadn't made that demand, then that obligation would not be in effect. And now the parent is actually leading the child to sin. By setting the bar too high, the child is actually now transgressing. You follow the logic here. The parent is creating an obligation that now the child is failing to meet. And now the parent, the Code of Jewish Law is saying the parent is now complicit in that child's failure. So it's a very interesting concept. On one hand, yes, honor your mother and your father. It's one of the 10 Commandments. But you have to remember, honor your mother and your father, it is a child's commandment. That's their mitzvah to follow. For your part as a parent, you should never be invoking that. That should never be your ace in the hole. Should never be your trump card. For your part as a parent, you want to avoid playing that card as much as you can avoid. And you want to make sure that you're not setting your child up to fail. And you are being as tolerant as possible. Or like King Solomon said in his wisdom, in Proverbs, Chanoich lenar al pi darkai. I'll tell you something very interesting, by the way. Very interesting. I had a video posted on social media, and I mentioned this verse, and I didn't even think it was a hot take. I really didn't think. Sometimes you say something controversial, and you only find out afterwards that it's controversial. Did that ever happen to you? Sure. Okay. So this has happened to me. It wasn't even my main point. I mentioned in passing.
Can you just translate it?
Okay. So that's where the controversy comes. How do you translate? Oh, okay. Chanoich lenar al pi darkai. 5 words. Okay. So I did translate it, educate the child according to his way, which means that you have to use discernment when you're educating a child, whether you're a teacher or you're a parent. You have to look at this child. You have to look at the circumstances. You have to take context into account. And there's no one size fits all. I mean, that's essentially by the way, is that your basic understanding of that verse?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
To you, is that the plain meaning of the verse?
I would think that's the only meaning of charisma.
Oh, you would think that's the only meaning. No hot take. Okay. So I was shocked. I was bombarded with comments, very indignant comments. People saying you're distorting scripture. That's not what it says. The verse says, educate the child according to God's way. So I responded and said, first of all, it doesn't say God. It says, according to his way. Now you could try to figure out whose way is his way. And you'd have to try to figure out what the pronoun is referring to, or the antecedent, if you want to use grammar. But it does not say educate the child according to God's way. But I was getting such pushback from people saying, no, it means the exact opposite. You have to force the child to follow God's way. It was so surprising because to me, the wisdom is so obvious there. The rest of the verse, educate the child according to his way. Even when he grows old, he will not depart from it. What does that mean? If you try to stuff someone into a box they don't fit into, you can keep them there as long as you hold them there. But as soon as you take your hands off, they're going to pop back. They're going to just go back. They're going to revert to factory settings. And a lot of parents are like that. Like they'll use reward and punishment to eke out of their child behavioral compliance while I'm watching you do what I say to do. And they're satisfied with it. That's enough for them. Now, when the child is out of sight, out of mind, the child can be doing anything. But as long as the parent doesn't know about it, and what do I care? As long as the kid's behaving in front of me and I can rest and I can not do disturb my child's behavior, that's good enough for me. So a lot of parents have that approach. So they stuff the kid into a box. And as long as he stays in that box in front of me, in front of his teachers, everything's good. What's going on inside of his mind, inside of his heart, what's going on when nobody's watching, what's going on between him and his maker, who cares? Right? That's the attitude a lot of parents have. That's called stuffing a child into a box that the child does not fit into. What King Solomon is saying, which is so brilliant, is figure out who this kid is. We're all unique. We all have different strengths. We have different challenges. And come up with a parenting style that's tailor-made to bringing out this child's uniqueness. And because it's tailor-made, it's bespoke, so to speak, then even when he grows old, he won't depart from it because it's his or hers. It fits. They own it. And there's such wisdom to it, such common sense, but such depth at the same time. I was so shocked that for many people, that was controversial. Like, it's controversial to say when we're dealing with human beings that you should take into account special qualities of that human being. And unfortunately, you see the people who have the one-size-fits-all approach, whether it's parents or it's teachers or educational institutions or communities, that approach very often is one of accepting a certain collateral damage. That if a kid's not going to fit in, that's sorry. And then they'll write that kid off. No, can't work with him.
I assume you won't want to talk about this, but that makes me want to talk about it even more. Is there ever a time where a parent should cut their kid off, not talk to them, disengage completely?
I see why you would consider that a controversial topic, but I'm glad you brought it up. Honestly, because it's something people discuss, something they talk about. Okay. So I don't like to speak in terms of general rules. Like I was just saying, go according to the child. When we deal with human beings, everything has to be nuanced. Everything can't just be black and white. So I don't want to say like a general sweeping pronouncement, but what I would say is that I have rarely, if ever, seen a situation where the parent didn't have the ability to somehow help their child succeed more in life. And that by cutting the child off from the parent is actually depriving the child of one of the most, if not the most important resources the child has to succeed in life, which is the access to a loving parental bond. So sometimes parents come to a point where they are burnt out, they're overwhelmed, which brings us back to the point I was saying before, the key to everything is emotional regulation. That's why you got to learn Chabad and increase your trust in God so that you can be emotionally stable. But sometimes the parents overwhelmed, I can't take this anymore, I can't deal with this, I'm done. But what's unfortunate about it is that the child's stability, the child's foundation is all built upon the parental bond. And I'm not even talking about little kids. I'm even talking about adults. Adults still need their children. Adults still need their parents. And when a parent cuts off from a child, the parent is depriving the child of that unique relationship, which in many ways is the child's path to their relationship with God. They say people's God concepts are often informed by how they think of their parents. There's a reason for that. Your relationship with your parents in many ways is your prototype, is your model for your relationship with God. And in many ways, it's your path to that relationship. And when a parent removes themselves from the child's life, it's almost like, I don't want to say something so severe, but it's almost like you're cutting the child off from God. So I wish parents understood that as hard as it is, like your child needs you and your child will benefit from an ongoing relationship with you. Now, some parents will counter that and say, no, my child and I have a terrible relationship. There's so much drama. There's so much fighting. It's not helping anyone. It's not helping me. It's not helping them. And to that, I would say, I believe you, but could we try a new model for a relationship? Could you just try to be there for your child as a source of emotional stability? Could you just be a provider, a pure provider with no expectations of anything? Just view yourself as having one role, and one role is I'm there to provide for my child. And see if flipping that mental switch changes the dynamic in the relationship, if it diffuses the tension and makes the relationship more tenable. And in every case I've seen where people can take that approach, it either drastically transforms the relationship, or at least it takes it out of like the red zone where they were flirting with the idea of cutting off, and then it doesn't become so dirging anymore. Like, oh, all of a sudden they can work with it.
Yeah, I hear that. But you know what? It's still, I think, so tricky because, parents, as time goes on, right, they have more experience in life and how life works and what true success in life, whatever that happiness, whatever it is. And then you have the kids who are young, energetic, and usually filled with a lot of ego, and they know what they want. How do you ultimately use that, though, in terms of, very often we see our kids making mistakes that we know they're making the mistake.
Yeah.
Do we let them? Do we stop them? Do we control them? And the mistake could be extreme. It could be very little or whatever it is.
Yeah, but that only furthers my point that your child needs you in their life. So if you remove yourself from a child's life because you're overwhelmed, then how are they going to receive your guidance?
My favorite part is coming up, but first, running a shul comes with tremendous spiritual reward, but behind the scenes, it can feel like nonstop logistics, spreadsheets, and forgotten pledges. That's where ShulSpace comes in. Built from the ground up and powered by BitBean, ShulSpace is a modern, all-in-one platform designed to help Gabbaim and administrators manage their shul more efficiently and effectively. ShulSpace streamlines everything from membership management and Aliyah tracking to automated billing, online payments, and donation receipts. It helps ensure that the pledges don't fall through the cracks and members are reminded and encouraged to give without that awkward follow-up text or delayed paperwork. That alone can lead to a major increase in collected revenue for the shul. But more than that, efficiency means impact. When your shul runs smoothly, your leadership can focus less on chasing checks and more on building community, enhancing programming, and strengthening the spiritual life of your kehillah. With integrated tools, real-time dashboards, and a beautifully simple interface, ShulSpace helps transform the day-to-day operations of your shul into a streamlined system that works. This is the future of synagogue management, and it's already helping shuls across the world grow and thrive. Want to see how it could work for your community? Reach out at 848-325-0701. Of course, you can WhatsApp them or call them, or you can send them an email at info@shulspace.com or go to shulspace.com to see their gorgeous website and see how it could apply to you. And we're going to dive right back in. But did you ever try getting a car and feel like you're on a bad game show? Surprise! Here's a mystery fee. Congratulations! You just spent the entire Sunday in a showroom. Yeah. No thanks. That's why I go with Wheels to Lease. I've worked with them and I've gotten cars with them. I've sent friends to them. They just get it right. No pressure, no weird fees, no drama. And they always find you the best price. Any make, any model, new or used, lease or finance, they'll even beat the price you thought was already the best. That is no joke. You tell them what you want, they handle everything and deliver it right to your door. Call 718-871-8715. No monkey business over here. You email them at inspire@wheelstolease.com or visit them at wheelstolease.com/inspire. Honest, fast, and really good at what they do. Wheels to Lease. My friends, you'll love them. Get the car from them. Why are you waiting? Now back to this week's episode.
Let's be practical. Let's say I have a good example. Let's say, obviously, if most people in this room, you want your kids to be Shomer Shabbos, right? And then you have a kid who's saying, it's not for me. Like, I don't want to keep Shabbos.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's very sad.
And that child grew up Shabbos observant. And
they grew up Shabbos.
they don't want to be.
Yeah. And whatever. I don't know the details of why not. Fine.
And I'm going to say some of you will probably trigger some indignant comments, but I'm not going to say it beyond my personal experience. In my personal experience, I've never encountered, not once, such a situation where the child who's no longer Shabbos observant, if we'll go with that example, why not? I've never once encountered an example where the child who's no longer Shabbos observant did not have negative emotional associations with Shabbos observance. In other words, it was not a purely ideological thing. Maybe it wasn't ideological at all. It was a negative emotional association, most of the time in the home. So we go back to the concept that I keep harping on but I harp on it because it's the key to everything. If the parent was stressed out and was, snipping at the kid and maybe it was revolving around Shabbos observance. So maybe it wasn't about Shabbos observance, but it took place on Shabbos. And then it built that association that this is unsafe. This is stressful. Well, what normal organism that is programmed by its creator to sustain its own life would continue rationally to subject itself to something that triggers a feeling of lack of safety? So of course, that child says, I'm no longer Shabbos observant, because that's what feels safe. Shabbos doesn't feel safe, so maybe lack of Shabbos will feel safe. So if that's the situation, what's the approach? The parent takes two extremes. One is the parent says, I'm going to keep on pushing it I'm going to keep on, that's going to become my campaign, my agenda. Yeah, keep Shabbos. Okay, the other extreme, Shabbos observant, you want to listen to me? Fine, all right, get out of here. Cut off, no relationship, get out of the house. Okay. Or how about this? How about forget about Shabbos right now? How about realize the fact that you, mom or dad, are your child's path to Shabbos? When your child will feel safe with you, when you will rebuild the feeling of security, parental safety that every baby craves, and every adult still wants, even though we can work around it and live without it, so to speak. But if you can be that source of safety and you keep Shabbos, inevitably your child will feel safe enough to also keep Shabbos. But it's not going to happen without restoring safety and security. That's the key to everything. So again, we come back to emotional regulation of the parents. And when a parent is saying, well, my kid's not keeping Shabbos and it's triggering me. Yeah, but you're being triggered by their lack of Shabbos observance is what's perpetuating the vicious cycle that's making it neurologically unsafe for them to keep Shabbos. If you can learn, okay, so let's talk really nitty-gritty. Let's say a Shabbos observant parent, it chills them, their kids not keeping Shabbos in front of them, and it's triggering them, and they're getting stressed out. What are they supposed to do? Okay, and they believe me when I say that you're being stressed out by your kid is actually making it harder and harder for them to keep Shabbos. And certainly setting them away and saying, go away from me, is making it almost impossible for them to keep Shabbos because they need you in their life in order to be their role model, but you're not making it possible for them to see you as a role model. All right, so what should the parent do? One of the things I say to my parents who take my course is that, remember when they were a baby. Every parent looks at the baby and they think the baby is beautiful. The baby's perfect. Well, your baby didn't do anything. Why are they perfect? What's so good about your baby? And yet nobody says to their baby, listen, grow up, learn how to talk. We'll go out for coffee. We'll have a conversation and I'll see if I like you. Right? Why does nobody say that? Why did they give the baby a free pass? So, some people say, because you have no expectations of a baby. When they grow up, then you do have expectations and okay, fine, no problem. I'll take that argument. But here's what I don't understand. I understand that babies can't do anything. So we don't have any feelings about what they do because they're not capable of really doing anything. And when you grow up, you can do things so that when your child is older, they can do things. You have a feeling, you have an opinion about what they're doing or not doing. No problem. I get that. But what happened to the original feeling of feeling good about them just for existing? Meaning to say, I understand why as they get older, now you have feelings about what they do. But why did you lose the good feelings about just the fact that they are? Where did that go? And the answer is one replaced the other. And it's a real pity. There's a certain inherent absolute value to life. Just the fact that a person exists and lives has value. That's the sanctity of life. We call that the soul. So I beg parents, see your child as a soul, which means see your child as having inherent, unconditional, absolute value. And if you think that sounds too lofty, which it does sound lofty, but it's not, because I can point out to you when you had that feeling. And that's when they were a baby. When they were a baby, their value was not based on what they were doing. Their value was built in. It was just the fact that they exist. Their value is unconditional, inherent, and infinite. What does that mean? Their value, I mean, these sound like big SAT words. What does it mean that a child's value is unconditional, inherent, and infinite? Unconditional means their value cannot be lost. There's nothing they can do to diminish or lose their value. Some children grow up feeling like they're on probation in their homes. Based on my performance, I'll get a performance review and they'll let me know. Maybe they'll cut me. Maybe thank you for your time with the firm. Good luck in your future endeavors. So there are certain children who live feeling literally on probation. So unconditional value means you have a value that cannot be lost. Inherent value means your value comes with you. It's not outside of you, meaning you don't have to acquire it. There are children who grow up feeling they have to go out and accomplish something to have value. They don't even believe that they matter unless they go out and prove it by doing something. An infinite value, that's the loftiest. That means you can't even add to it. If it's infinite, you can't even add to it, which means that if you do something good, that's wonderful. We're very proud of your accomplishment, but you're doing something good doesn't make you more worthy because you are already infinitely worthy just by the fact that you exist. Again, it sounds very lofty, but every parent intuitively does it for their child when their child's a baby. So we got back to that. So going back to the scenario, I'm Shabbos observant. My kid's not Shabbos observant. It's triggering me. I'm emotionally dysregulated. What do I do? And then I realize, hold on though, my child needs me in their life, and they need me as a calm, soothing presence, but I'm triggered. Okay, stop a second. As you're so into Shabbos, which ostensibly you're into Shabbos, not because it's, some man-made creation, especially you believe it's from God. Okay, you believe in God? So then get really spiritual. Can you see your child as a soul? Can you see that your child has unconditional, inherent, and infinite value just from the fact they exist, whether they're keeping Shabbos right now or not? And if you could do that, and you're their parent, that will bring them back to Shabbos observance. But if you can't, because you're emotionally dysregulated, then it's almost like you tell them not to observe Shabbos.
Does this advice, which obviously with Shabbos, we're talking in terms of spiritual and obviously that's also practical, but sometimes, kids are starting to head down a path that there's kind of no return. Again, same way we gave a Shabbos example, let's say like hard drugs, right? Where a parent is petrified. If they follow this path, they will potentially really mess up their life. What should parents do for that?
Yeah, but you want to use drugs as the example. Why does anyone take drugs? I might get into a whole side conversation about addiction, but people equate addiction with physical or chemical dependency, which actually is not such a, that's not such a difficult issue. I mean, the solution for physical dependency, chemical dependency is withdrawal and detox. It's not pleasant, but that's the solution. Real addiction is psychological, emotional dependency, where even if the person is detoxed, they don't want to be sober. It's not that their body needs it. It's that they're uncomfortable with reality. So the point is, why are they using the chemical? The question is, what's causing the emotional pain that's requiring the escape? And so we come back to, again, if your child is in such acute emotional pain, what can you as a parent do to at least take it down a notch? I'm not saying you're the end all and be all. I'm not saying that you can. We wish we could protect our children from all harm, all aggravation, all inconvenience. We wish. We can't. But more than anyone else in our children's lives, we are the person who can make the biggest impact. So if my child is in acute emotional pain where they need to self-medicate, numb themselves, what can I do to take down that emotional pain? So that's the way that I would look at it. Instead of the parent saying, playing cat and mouse and saying, well, my kid wants to do drugs. How do I get between them and the drugs? And if you do, and if you succeed to keep them away from the drugs, but now when they were self-medicating because of some pain, they're still in pain. So they won't have a drug. So then they'll check out some other way. So they'll use technology. Also, I'll take away their technology. So they'll escape at the fantasy, they'll escape at the mental illness. There's so many ways people could check out of a reality that's too painful for them. So it's like, don't ask, how do I stop them from self-medicating? Ask, what can I do to make my child be in less acute pain right now? And as a parent, there's always something, again, it's not like you can make it all go away. But as a parent, you more than any other person in the world and more than anyone else in your child's life can do something to make life more bearable, more comfortable.
It's very powerful. My question is, from everything we spoke about, and of course, to get the best parenting advice in the 45 minutes, it's almost impossible. But you did such a great job. I'm curious if there's a story from your experience that you've seen that could bring out one of the points that you've made today.
My favorite parenting story, I hope I tell it correctly, because I'm not going to say all the details because I want to preserve some level of anonymity. But my favorite parenting story is that a woman came over to me. I just had finished speaking to a large group of people. I don't want to be too specific what type of audience it was. It was humans you were talking to. Yes, we'll keep it. Yeah. And I'll even say that it was a bunch of women who were leaders in their communities. And get that specific. So they were all leaders in their community. So one of the women came over to me and said, I want to take you, I took your parenting course and it really changed my relation with my children. She says, but I want to tell you something even more than that. My mother took your parenting course, and she doesn't have any kids at home anymore. All the kids are grown up and married, out of the house. And my mother took the course. And my mother taking the course had such a profound effect on me. She said, to the extent that it improved my shalom bayis, my relationship with my husband. And my husband even remarked, wow, things are so different. The energy, the dynamic is just, everything shifted. There's more peace. There's more connection. And she says, it's because my mother took this course. Well, after we were all grown and out of the house, and it shifted the way she related to us and healed something in me, which then affected everything else. And she says this line. She says, it's amazing how one thing can affect so many other things. And as she says this, I told her there's a group of women who are all leaders in their community, so they all kind of know each other as colleagues. And as she said this to me, another woman comes over who looks still slightly older than this woman who's been talking to me, and puts her arm around her, like in a very affectionate way. And they almost look like the same age, but like there's a little bit of an age gap. And as I'm watching them, I realize this is a mother's embrace. And it just dawns on me, it clicks. And I probably shouldn't say this, not like socially safe, but I said to the woman who had been speaking to me, I said, is this your mother? And the other one, and she says, yes, this is my daughter. I have her mother. And I didn't say to her, oh, we were just talking about you. But I saw that love and that purity of that connection in that moment of that physical contact and that smile and you could feel the peace radiating off of both of them. So to me, that's my favorite parenting story because it shows how much the parent-child bond really affects us and we don't realize it. Here's a person who's already grown out of the house, married, raising her own children, and her mother has a shift in her identity as a parent. And that goes, it like retroactively heals so much stuff. And that's what I would say to any parent is like, you have to realize the gift that you're giving your child and that it's never too late. It's never too late. Children always need their parents. You know, my father passed away this year and I can tell you, children never grow out of needing their parents. And my father was 90 years old. I'm 50. And he's my father. You know, that never stops. And if you think it's too late, it's not too late. If you think you're too far gone, you made too many mistakes, it's not true. If you think that it's not going to make a difference, it's also not true. Like, there's nothing like a parent. A parent has such influence, for better, for worse, to make or break a child. And if you as a parent start to heal your own parenting self-concept, it will have a massive, massive impact on the quality of the child's life. And what parent wouldn't do that for their child?
Very beautiful. Thank you, Rabbi Shais Taub.
If you made it this far in this episode, please drop the word soul in the comments. SOUL. Let us know your favorite piece of advice from Rabbi Taub. Maybe you disagree with him on a point. I don't know. We want to hear from you. And Rabbi Taub is running a campaign now for all the beautiful work that he does. You could go and donate at charity.com/RST. That's Rabbi Shais Taub. Charity.com/RST. We'll have a link there. You could help him continue the amazing work he's doing. He's literally changing lives one Instagram video at a time. But there's a lot more than Instagram. He's right by the OEL. He's doing so many things, and you could go to his classes, go to his shul. He's doing a lot. We're also going to drop the links to social media so you could be one of the only people in the world who if you haven't been following him, to go ahead and check out the amazing work he's doing. If you have yet to go check out our sponsors, if you need a car, turn to Wheels Lease. You need to upgrade in your shul, check out our friends at Shul Space, brought to you by BitBean. And of course, help support our friends at the Tesla Raffle, and maybe you'll get the precious Rivian for free. Use the code REALCHAIM for money off on your ticket. Go ahead, check them out. Now, before I get to my closing remarks, thanks again to FFH. It was an affordable Pesach program. Clappy was there, Rabbi Taub was there, Mendy Palin was there, Maish Tischler was there, Uncle Maishi, good food, good atmosphere, and honestly, just really kind people running it. They actually cared, and we did interviews there, and I had a really enjoyable time. Check them out if you're in the market for your next amazing Pesach program. Now, Rabbi Taub's ideas are brilliant, and I think we all want to be the best parents possible. Like I said, there is no manual, but conversations like these really help me, and I'm sure you. We focus on figuring out how we can be the best parents and the best kids possible. Remember, inspiration's everywhere. L'chaim. Share this episode. Okay, thank you so much for watching. More to come.
Living L'chaim.